Welcome back to the Pageant project, guys. Hope you're doing well. Yes, I do wear glasses. Hopefully they're not too distracting for you. Today I wanted to go over the 7 deadly pageant sins. Now, obviously that's a little tongue-in-cheek, but the idea with this, and I'm looking down just at my phone for some notes that I made, I put out a lot of content for pageant beginners. These mistakes, these 7 deadly sins in air quotes, they're more for the more seasoned competitors. And I don't mean that you've necessarily been competing for 10 years, but it's probably not applicable to someone who's only doing their very first pageant. I've said in previous videos and previous episodes that I really think if you want to get into pageantry, before you decide to take it too seriously, you should actually do one to see if you enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, then you're not going to continue competing. But if, do one just for fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. But this is not for that person. These are mistakes that I've seen the more experienced competitors making, and these are for some of the biggest systems, if not the biggest systems in the world. So 7 deadly pageant sins. So number 1, you're in the wrong system. Number 1 is you're in the wrong system. And this, I've said many times, and I strongly believe this, selection is 90% of the game when it comes to a lot of things. The other big one, the very obvious example, is in your relationship. If you select the right partner to begin with, a lot of things become a lot easier. Now, not all systems are the same. Not all systems are equal. And just because your best friend or your role model has participated in a particular system and says really good things about it, doesn't mean that that is the right system for you, even if you are very, very similar. I truly believe that when you find the right system for you, not that, by the way, that doesn't mean you're going to win, but it becomes a lot easier to compete, to do the hard work. You know that your hard work is going to be appreciated. And if you win, it's great. If you don't win, you're not going to feel like that was a gigantic waste of your time, money, and effort. Now, I think you can do some of the hard work in terms of working out which system is the best for you through research, whether that's looking at the system's social media, looking at interviews with past queens, even looking at things like how often do the same girls compete in the same system. I think that's a very good sign if girls are repeat customers, so to speak. I do think, however, at the end of the day, the only way to really experience a system is to compete in it yourself. And also bear in mind that the competition from year to year can be very, very different because, assuming that the director stays the same, the pageant judges could be completely different. So there's no scientific way as such to get this 100% right, but spend a lot of time before you decide to compete. Spend a lot of time, a lot of your thought power, a lot of your brain power in determining which is the right system for you. I don't mean you should be agonizing over it for a month, but when you are deciding that, yes, I want to compete, spend a lot of that percentage of time thinking about which system do you want to compete in. Don't just keep doing the same system because it's the same one you did last year. Don't do a system because you think you've got a great chance of winning it, and don't do a system simply because it's the biggest and shiniest one and you're attracted to the shiny lights. So find the right system for you. It can take a while. If you're lucky, you'll find it on your first go. I know a lot of people who haven't found it until 10 years later into their pageant career. But that's number 1. You're in the wrong system. Sin number 2, you're still chasing applause. Said differently, this is you are chasing validation. Now, I have to say this. No person that I've coached, no girl that I've coached, no pageant contestant that I've coached has said, I am chasing validation. Because we don't want to say that, because that would be way too honest, vulnerable, and it's not the right thing to do. I'm talking about subconsciously, not consciously. And the way that you can sort of see this is when someone becomes, and maybe this is you become fixated on, I need to win this pageant, or I need to get top 5, or I need to win this particular award in the pageant because, and that reason that follows it because it's like, oh, because I need to reach more people. I need to build my platform. It would provide me amazing opportunities. People would listen to me, right? I'd have a voice. All the reasons that follow that because are things that you could do better, faster, simpler, more cheaply, more easily, and probably more effectively by doing that thing itself. If you wanted to build a platform, go build a platform. If you want to be taken more seriously, do the work to do that. Build your advocacy, build your platform, get a website, start a business. You don't need to do a pageant to do any of that stuff. And so when I hear someone saying, oh, I'm I'm not in it for validation, but if I do this, it will open doors. Or if I win this pageant, it will open doors. Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. When you really look at it, most systems these days are not opening nearly as many doors as they were 10, 20 years ago. So I'm always a bit skeptical when someone is really stubborn about, oh, the only way that I can achieve my goals is by winning this pageant. And to me, that's normally a sign that you're really wanting the validation. Maybe you're wanting the applause. Maybe you're wanting to be able to say that, hey, I won Miss So-and-so. Or maybe, and this is a big one, maybe you're trying to prove someone wrong. Maybe someone, maybe a parent, maybe an ex-best friend or an ex-partner said, you'll never be able to win that. You're not a pageant girl. And now you're trying to prove them wrong. That's very similar to validation, because you're not doing it for you. You're doing it for someone else. In this case, sure, you're doing it to prove someone wrong, but you're still at that person's mercy, aren't you? You're still doing it for them and not doing it for you. So be very, very careful when it comes to validation. As I said, no one's going to admit it consciously. No one's going to come to me and say, oh, I'm doing it for validation, unless you're exceptionally honest. But, if you say, yes, I'm in it for the validation, there's going to be a conversation to be had after that. But be very wary about doing it for validation. And you'll have to do some internal work and really have some good self-awareness to know whether you're doing it or not. And as I said, the biggest tell for me really is when someone gets stuck or fixated on the pageant being the only way that they can achieve their goals, when that's just objectively and very obviously not true. By the way, I'm not saying that's a reason you shouldn't do a pageant. I'm saying when you are doing a pageant, you should be aware that, this is one way of achieving your goal, but not the only way. It's what they say, like, be firm in your goals, be resolute in your goals, but be flexible in the approach. Sin number 3, you're thinking too much. Now, I say this to all of you overthinkers. You're probably type A overachievers, and especially if you're a strategic thinker, it's very easy to fall into the trap of, especially if you're going into a system again, or you've done a lot of research into the system and you go, oh, the judges look for this in the walk, and the judges want this in my platform and advocacy, and they like this sort of gown, and they want me to say these sorts of things, etc., etc., etc. Some research is good, don't get me wrong. Too much research is bad. It's like anything else. Any quality you take to an extreme is going to have disastrous results or some disastrous consequences. And honestly, there aren't many people who get this right. Some people don't think enough, and some of you think way too much. And what I will say on this is, if you're guilty of not really doing your research, do more. And you'll only know when you're getting the balance somewhat right when you feel like you're doing too much research. And if you're the type of person who overthinks, the only way you're going to know when you're getting the balance right is when you think, I'm not thinking at all. This is really uncomfortable and dangerous. And I say that because if you think about like a bike, where it's very important that you have balance, if you're leaning too far left, the only way to get balance is to actually throw your balance too far to the right, and then you have some chance of getting the balance correct. So unless you are feeling like, oh, this is a bit uncomfortable, you're not actually getting the balance right. I would say if you have an objective coach or someone who's got good self-awareness, or you have good self-awareness, you're probably more likely to know when you're getting this right. But there's no perfect approach. You probably don't think enough, or you overthink. You'll probably know this already. And in terms of growing and developing as a pageant contestant, as a person, you really need to throw your balance the other way to the point where it feels a bit uncomfortable. That's when you know that you are growing. There is no plan. There is no secret to winning a pageant. And any coach who tells you otherwise, run from them. Of course, there are things that increase your chances of winning a pageant. Okay, being able to speak well, being able to articulate, being in good physical health, having a wardrobe that suits you. Why am I so blurry? All these things, but they're given. They're very, very obvious. So of course, yes, you want to give some thought as to how to present the best version of yourself, and how to adjust that or customize that for the particular pageant you're going for. But really beyond that, overthinking isn't going to get you anywhere. It's like the old saying, stay in your head, you're dead. So I really want you to do your research, but then once you know that you've done the correct amount, whatever that means, you get out of here and start leading from, you can't tell, start leading from your heart. I'm tapping my heart, you can't see. But that's number 3. Sin number 4, you're majoring in the minors. Now, the biggest example of this, when I say majoring in the minors, is, there's this principle called the Pareto principle, which means 80% of result comes from 20% of your efforts. And that's true everywhere. It's true in general nature, and it's very true in pageantry. When we talk about pageantry, and if you ask someone who's competed for a while in pageants, and then they finally won their title, and you ask them what was it that tipped them over the edge, what got them that win, at the end. And it wasn't just blind luck, it wasn't just dumb luck, and it wasn't just persistence either. Very often, it's something small that over-indexed in importance. Maybe it was a self-belief. Maybe it was stopping the overthinking, which we just talked about. It is hardly ever, oh, I found the right gown, or I found the perfect platform to put my website on. And yet, especially when you're, let's say, not a beginner competitor, but maybe in your second or third pageant, and now you've got bitten by the pageant bug and you're determined to win your dream title, you start fussing and spending a lot of time thinking about stuff that really doesn't matter. That's why it's called majoring in the minors. And this is things like, okay, you're spending 80% of your pageant prep time trying to find a customized gown, maybe made in Southeast Asia somewhere because it's cheaper there. And you're so sure that you have this absolutely perfect gown that's going to drop the judge's jaws on the floor. You've heard this story before. I've heard it many, many times. And I'm here to tell you as a judge, not that I couldn't care less, but I don't see all of that when I'm judging someone on stage or when in interview, right? Yes, I want your interview outfit to look professional and to look sharp and on point, but I'm not going to know if you spent an hour looking for that, 100 hours looking for that, or whether it's something you already had in your cupboard. I'm here to determine as a judge what is your suitability of you being an amazing, what's the probability of you being an amazing title holder or the best title holder for the system? And that's going to come to your ability to relate to me, to articulate your goals and how they align with the pageant system. And when you're on stage, it's amazing how little things can tilt certain judges, but they're never things that you could prepare for. Things like, oh, you're wearing the sarong. Do I take the sarong off and throw it around? And, you know, some people say that's confidence, and other people say she looks like a bullfighter. And so obsessing, for example, about little details on your walk. I'm not saying don't get your walk right. I'm saying sometimes you really don't know whether you should go left, right, or in the middle. And if you go left, you lose half the percent, you lose 50% of the judges. You go right, you lose 50% of the judges. So don't worry about it. Do you, right? Spend the time focusing on what really matters. And as a guideline, I would say the things that really matter are the things you're going to be able to take away from the pageant, no matter whether you come first or last. And those are things like networking, your public speaking ability, your ability to communicate, the work that you put into your platform, your advocacy, all of that stuff that you can take away from the pageant regardless of how you perform. That's the stuff that you really want to be focusing on, in my opinion. Working, determining, as I said, with a sarong, whether you're going to flip it or not, whether you're going to do one turn or not, no turns, how you're going to stand. Yeah, I get you want to do it, but I wouldn't be spending the majority of my time on that. The big one really is walking, and the other big one for me is wardrobe. I get that those are important, and I get that you might love it. If you love it, do it. But just bear in mind, it's not the main reason anyway, for doing pageants. It is a nice side hustle, but hopefully you're getting into pageants because you feel like this is a leadership position you want, not because you just want to buy a fancy gown. It's like what I was saying before. If you want to buy a fancy gown, buy a fancy gown. You don't need to do a pageant to do that. I mean, maybe you need the excuse for it. So that was number 4, majoring in the minors. Don't do that. Major in the majors. Sin number 5, you're not living, you're just competing. What I mean by this is, let me put it this way. The secret to succeeding in pageantry is to create an amazing life outside of it. The secret to succeeding in pageantry is to create an amazing life outside of it. Said differently, if the pageant's over and you are dreading going back to normal life, your ordinary life, your 9 to 5, something is off. Something is wrong. And that is a sign that you're not ready, in my estimation, to be the title holder. Because if people are going to look up to you as a role model and you don't enjoy your life, that's going to show. And so I want you to invest the time into creating a life on your terms that is successful and fulfilling and makes you happy. In your terms, not my terms, in your terms. And you need to give some thought as to what that looks like. The 3 general areas that we've all focused on as human beings is health, wealth. So 3 areas: health, wealth, relationships. So number 1, health, number 2, wealth, and number 3, relationships. That's not in order, by the way. It's just the order I'm saying it. But health, obviously your physical health, your emotional health, your spiritual health. Wealth doesn't mean just being rich. It means, how are you making that money? Are you doing something that aligns with you and fulfills you to do that? Do you just have a job, or do you have a career? Or even better than that, do you have a calling, right? And then the third one is relationship. And that's not just your intimate relationship. That's with your friends, your family. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. But just imagine if you win that title that you've always been waiting for and there's no one to celebrate it with, how fulfilling is it really going to be? And so I want you to spend some time and go, okay, in the areas of health, wealth, and relationships, let's say maybe what would I give myself out of 10? And, if there's an area, let's say you're 10, let's say your wealth, your career, you're 8 or 9, your relationships, you really have your 8 or 9, but then you go, oh, my physical health. Like I've given up so much to achieve in my career and I'm putting all this time into meeting other people, but I'm eating badly, I'm drinking too much. And so my health, maybe it's a 3 or a 4. And I don't say that so you should beat yourself up. I'm saying, okay, awareness, let's go to work on that. And maybe pageantry is a really great motivation to work on that area. And that could apply to your career as well, because you might want to talk about your career in your interview, and relationships. Like you might want to build relationships build a pageant team around you. And here's a promise I'll make you, if you create an amazing life, you work on bettering your life for 3 months, 6 months, a year, and you come back and compete for the same pageant a year from now, and you haven't done any pageant coaching, you've just worked on your life, you are going to make a much better title holder, potential title holder. And I will definitely say you're going to be a much better interview. You have much more to talk about because you've gone to live life. You haven't just been pageant training, right? So work on your life first, and pageants come second. Pageants is a great way to showcase what you've done with your life. But if you've done nothing with your life, if you haven't grown in the last year and you just come back for a pageant next year, that is not an ideal solution, not an ideal approach in my belief, in my opinion, because you're just going to come back the same person as you were last year. And I want to see you growing, so that when you leave that pageant, as I said, you're looking forward to it, you're not dreading it. So that's number 5. Sin number 6, you're overcoached. I have said that I don't think you necessarily need a coach for your first pageant. In fact, you don't need a coach at all. Not everyone works the same way. Now, there are some amazing coaches out there. I know some of them right now, but not everyone works in the same way. Some people work really well with coaching, and even if you could do with some coaching, even if you want some coaching, not everyone wants the same frequency, the same consistency. Not everyone wants the same thing from a coach. So you might want a conversation once a week. You might want just one conversation to set you on the right path, and then off you go by yourself. Some people really want someone on speed dial 24 hours a day so they can, oh my God, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? Other people are much more let me get it straight. Let me check in with you once a month. And otherwise, if you don't hear from me, it's not because I don't value you, it's because I've got things on lock, I'm handling it myself. There are a lot of people who will do better with maybe one coaching session, and then they can look up the rest themselves. Now, I tell you this from experience. I coached myself tennis. Tennis is not an easy thing to coach yourself in. I didn't even have someone on the other side. I had of the net. I had a ball machine to throw the balls at me, and I had a video camera to record my strokes, and I coached myself. So guess what? I had to work out what actually matters and what doesn't. And so I think that's what made me a great tennis coach, and maybe what lent into my coaching skills in general is I know what makes a difference and what doesn't. Way too many coaches say way too many things. You don't need to hear a lot. You just need that one thing, probably, that will break open the entire game for you. I was saying this to a friend just the other day. I said, if I had taken on, I would never have gotten to be as good as I am at tennis. And I'm not the world's best, but I'm pretty good. I would never have gotten to be that good if I'd taken on any coach. The only reason I got to where I am, because I had no natural talent. The only reason that I got semi-decent was because I coached myself. And I know that some of you out there are like that. You'd rather look it up on YouTube. You'd rather listen to some podcasts and then figure it out yourself. And so I say that not to say that's the right way, but I think that's overlooked very often. You might like one coaching session to get the lay of the land, or just to check in 1 or 2 or 3 coaching sessions for the entire year. I'm talking about like the entire pageant prep. And then the rest of it, you're going to figure it out yourself. Other people want regular coaching, but the overcoaching comes in when you don't have any thoughts of your own. Everything you say, everything you think, everything you do was told to you by some coach who said you should say this. When that happens, you don't exist. You're like an amalgamation. You're like a Frankenstein of all these different coaches' opinions. And it shows because you blend in. You're like the equivalent of a beige Volvo, at least back in the old days. I don't know if Volvos are cool anymore, but the beige Volvo stereotype was because the beige Volvo was considered to be the most boring car you could ever have. We used to say it was like the car that most accountants have. If you're an accountant, I'm sorry. But that was a stereotype. And, in this day and age, the one thing you can't be is boring. You just can't be. And especially like on social media, you need to grab people's attention. So if you cannot make a decision without talking to a coach or speaking to a coach, it's probably a sign that you've had too much coaching And maybe you should go it alone, go solo for a little bit until you start getting some of your original thoughts back and your spark in you. If I'm judging, I don't want to be speaking to your coach. I want to be speaking to you. I want to hear what your dreams, goals, and aspirations are, not what your coach's dreams, goals, and aspirations for you are. So be wary of that. As I said, people approach coaching differently. But overall, if you don't have any original thoughts left and you just feel like everything you think, say, and do is what your coach told you to do, then that's a danger. Sin number 7, and the final one, you don't know when to stop. And there's no black and white answer with this, but I think you should have an exit strategy. I think you should have some goal that you're trying to achieve in pageantry, and that when you've achieved it, move on, at least for a period of time. This is not to say you have to say that you're done with pageants and that you're never going to touch them again for the rest of your life. As you move on, different age, different goals, different season, you might find that, hey, I feel like doing a pageant again, and that's fine. But as I alluded to before, if you feel like pageants are the only way that you can achieve your goals, I think you have some living and some growing to do. So if you've just been doing pageant after pageant after pageant, and your bio goes from miss this to miss that, and then to miss so-and-so, and then your advocacy is this, and then your advocacy is that, stop. Take some time to go and find yourself. Pageantry is not like, I've talked about being a tennis coach, pageantry is not like a sport, a traditional sport, in the sense that the more you do it, the better you get. If you want to get better at tennis, play more tennis within reason, right? Pageantry is not quite similar because it's not quite the same because, as I said, it's a showcase of you as a human being. And so the practice really is, yes, doing pageants. Okay, so I need to be able to talk about it, I need to be able to do the walk, etc. But if you haven't worked on being the human being part of it, if you haven't improved, you haven't developed over the last 12 months, you haven't really become a better title holder or a better potential title holder. Yes, you've worked out how to articulate yourself better. Maybe you learn how to walk better. But the work when it comes to pageantry at least needs to be somewhat directed into improving yourself and bettering yourself. So if you really have lost sight of that, like if you're doing a pageant and you're going, wow, my pageant bio is exactly the same as it was last year, or my paperwork was exactly the same as it was for the last pageant, I've got nothing to add to it, nothing to change. That might be a sign. Take a stop. Maybe it's temporary, but go and work on yourself for at least a few months and then decide whether you want to enter another pageant. Pageants are not going to solve anything, really. I think they're a great opportunity and they can be used to learn a lot of skills, meet really cool people, but they're not the end-all solution. I think they're a great stepping stone. If you're seeing pageantry as the solution, as the end game unto itself, I think that's a sign to stop, at least temporarily, as I said, and then maybe come back to it when you're ready. And so those are, for me, as I said, the more experienced competitors, those are the 7 big areas where I see a lot of you guys fall down. You might be guilty of one of them. You might be guilty, I don't want to say guilty, but you might have experienced one of them. You might know that you've experienced all 7 of them. Maybe none of them apply to you, in which case I say, great, you're further along than 99% of the people that I've met. If you have any other things that you notice make a difference between the more elite level competitors, let me know. I'd love to know your thoughts. But this is mainly a thought exercise. And I want you to just turn this over and go, okay, that number 1, number 2, or whatever it is, have I maybe been doing that? Like, for example, the one I talked about, validation, as I said, no one consciously comes up to me and say, I'm doing a pageant for validation. It's subconscious. And if I had to say one key to succeeding, not only in pageantry, but in life, it's self-awareness, really knowing what you're good at, what you're not so good at. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons for taking on a coach. If you do decide to take on a coach, is to help you with that self-awareness. They can be a voice, an outside opinion, an objective outside opinion looking at you, helping you see your blind spots. None of us can see our blind spots. That's why they're called blind spots. But if you have that self-awareness, you'll know the areas where you need to work on. You'll know when it's time maybe to step away. You'll know maybe when it's time to re-enter. Right? So give me your thoughts on this. I'd love to hear your thoughts as always. As I said, I put out a lot of stuff for beginners. This is really not for the beginners. This is more for the experienced competitors. But if you're an experienced competitor, you've done 2, 3, 4, 20 pageants. I don't know. I'm afraid to ask. Let me know your thoughts. What you think are the biggest things that have held you back, if they've held you back in the past, or maybe the biggest things that are holding you back right now. And we'll open the discussion and I'll give you my thoughts.